I'm going to start second chapter of Political Science, Book 1, that is the end of bipolarity. What is the meaning of bipolarity? Bipolarity can be defined as a system of world order in which the majority of global economic, military and cultural is influenced in between two states, that is United States and Soviet Union. End of bipolarity, that this happened when there was a disintegration of Soviet Union. That gave an end to the Cold War and the ideological disputes between the two superpowers. There was no military alliance. What was Soviet system and its features? USSR came into existence in 1917 after socialist revolution in Russia. Now let us go back to the history. Why socialist revolution took place in Russia? In Russia, the First World War, first of all we should know the First World War began in 1914 and ended in 1918. Russia had a war with Germany. Now in Russia, peasants and workers were not happy. They had joined military, they were not trained, they were not equipped, there was no bread, so they protested against autocratic rule in Russia. That time there was Tsar Nicholas King. So there was Lenin, who was a big admirer of Karl Marx, who had an ideology of communism. Communism means workers. The power will be in the hands of workers. The profit will be shared among workers according to the needs. Lenin in Russia made his own party named as Communist Party. I think children, you are very much clear with the first feature of Soviet system. Let's come to the second point. Now, in Russia, there was an ideology of socialism. Socialism is based on the principle of equality. Means the government will be working for the welfare of the people. Now, third point. In the third point, there was abolition of private property. Means the land and the productive assets will be controlled by the state, that is government. Next point is one party system. Now in Russia, there was only one party, that is Communist Party. There was no other political party. So there was no opposition, no criticism. So that only party can concentrate only on the welfare of the people. There will be no competition. Next was planned economy. Planned economy means that they have systematically planned how they will be investing, how the resources will be used in the country based on the priority. Like in India, there is a 5-year plan. We also make a 5-year plan, short-term plan and long-term plan, how we will be running our country. So same way it was in Russia also. Then next is about self-dependent. Now in Russia, everyone was self-dependent. They were not importing any goods and services. Everything was produced in the country, from the pin to the car. So they were self-reliant. It was there in their mind that if they will import anything from the country, other country, the country can take the advantage of them. So they were in the policy of self-reliant, not to import from any other country. Next is about the employment opportunity. There was no unemployment because Everything was made in the country. Labor was not exported from outside. So everyone was having employment opportunity. Next is about the efficient transport system. In Russia, the transport system was really very efficient. Every remote places, corners of Russia was attached to, connected to each other. So every area in the Russia was well developed. The next is about maintaining the minimum standard of living. Everyone was having at least the minimum living standard. Next is about, I already spoke to you about that there was no imports. They did not want it to be dependent on any other country in the world. Now let's come to the next about the negative points of the Soviet system. There were some negative points in the Soviet system. Let's see the first point. The first point was lack of democracy. People were not allowed to criticize the government as there was only one party system. So no political party competition was there. So no criticism, no freedom of speech. People cannot come up and criticize the government policies if there is anything wrong. Next is communist control. As I already spoke that only one communist control, that was government, was only in the hand of Communist Party. Next is about unaccountable single party. Because there was one party, so they are not accountable to anyone to answer. There is only single party. Next point is invasion of Afghanistan, that was from 1979 to 1989. So there was arms race. 10 years there was a war. So the people were, there was a shortage of consumer goods. The people was not happy with the Soviet system. Then came up Mikhail Gorbachev. He was a general secretary of Communist Party in Soviet Union, that was in 1985. He promised his people with many reforms, that was good relations with the Western world. He wanted to maintain good relations with the United States. Capitalist ideology. I should tell you what is capitalist ideology. In this, means of production will be in the control of private people and their main aim is profit making. Now, then there was a political reforms. The political reforms were that the people can choose their leader and they have the right to speak against the wrong things happening in the government. They can criticize the policies if there is anything wrong. Freedom of speech and expression, you can say. Then there was democracy. There was a restoration of democracy. But the promises which was made by Mikhail Gorbachev was very slow rate. People were promised many things and they were expecting that these things will be happening very soon. So he was not popular among his people and also the leaders in his party. Now, next came up the new national hero. He was Boris Yeltsin in 1991. He won popular election and shook off the centralized control. Power began to shift from the Soviet Union to republics. In December 1991, under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin, three major republics of USSR, that was Russia, Ukraine and Belarus, declared disbanded. Capitalism and democracy were adopted as the base for the post-Soviet republics. Now let us come what happened after disintegration. what were the consequences? Now, there was an end of Cold War. There was always the war between the two big ideologies, that was capitalism and socialism. So they have lost USSR have lost the socialism. So there was only one ideology, that was capitalism. So there was end of Cold War. US was the sole superpower. Then capitalism became dominant. Then there was end of Soviet bloc. The last was there was rise of multipolarity era. So with this, I think children, it is very clear to you all these points. Let us recall once again, that is Soviet system, its positive points. Then we did about the negative points of Soviet system. Then how Mikhail Gorbachev came and promised so many reforms to the people, but he failed. And then Boris Yeltsin, he was the one leader who brought the disintegration in USSR. And then what was the consequences? I hope you have understood this chapter very well. Thank you.